Good, excellent.
Welcome to Capitals Uncovered, the Pelle, Neroth, Taylor, and Martin Sieff show, where we discuss geopolitics mostly. Last week we talked about Marlowe's Shakespeare. I hope you watched that because we cover the literary spectrum of politics as well. We're not just talking about geopolitics, and that was an excellent example of where we want to go. We've got Constantin Hoffmeister today. Speaking of literature or the politics, political art, writing as an art. Constantin, you were publishing director, I think, of Arktos Publishing, which, for those in the know, is a very famous right-wing conservative publishing house. And
Well,
your concerns are a lot of my concerns. I did a documentary a few years ago about Sweden dying to be multicultural, about the mass immigration into Sweden. I think you've got contacts in Sweden, but now you're running something called Multipolar Press, and you've just written a book about the decline of white America. So tell us what your projects are at the moment. That the most important thing that your sell, as it were.
I don't work for Arktos anymore, actually. I stopped
Okay,
working
yeah.
for Arktos last year in September. I have my own publishing house, and as you mentioned, Multipolar Press was founded last year. I published a variety of books already. I published two books by Oswald Spengler. One is the abridged edition of The Decline of the West, which is the only one on the market right now, actually, because the original one is like two volumes, 600 pages each, 1,200 pages. I cut it down to 250 pages and wrote like sort of bridge passages, simply because it's probably one of the most relevant books of our time right now, because we're actually living in the decline of the West, obviously. Yes. The latest book that I published with Multipolar Press, I wrote myself. It's called The Fate of White America. And it's actually an ambivalent fate, right? I mean, it could be decline, could possibly be a renaissance. I guess it depends on different factors, which we can discuss right now if you want.
Well, talk about just let's talk about the Oswald Spengler. I mean, it's one of those books I've heard of and read about, but I haven't actually read it. Tell us the contents of it and why it came out. I think it came out during, or was it just before World War One? And
Well,
why
actually,
are the concerns of that book? Why is it relevant today?
it was published in two volumes between 1918 and 1922. So Oswald Spengler was a German historical philosopher, I would call him. And I guess The Decline of the West is his magnum opus. It basically posits a cyclical view of history because nowadays, in our liberal, saturated world, we're used to a progressive, quote unquote, view of history. So at some point in the past, history started, and supposedly the trajectory of history always goes forward to some end goal, some sort of like materialist earthly paradise, right? So this is a liberal worldview. Well, Oswald Spengler, well, more than 100 years ago, he said that history is cyclical. Yes, because he viewed cultures as organisms. So each culture is born, it grows up, it matures, it withers, and then it dies. Yes. And according to Spengler, this is inevitable. It cannot be changed. It's like an I don't know a 100-year-old woman who wants to be 12 years old again. I mean, she can imagine herself being 12 again, but she won't be 12 years old again. She's 100 years old. She's about to die. I mean, she's close to death, right?
Mm.
And she's very limited in her capabilities, uh, mental and physical. And he viewed cultures very similar. So when cultures enter sort of like the winter phase of their existence, they turn into civilizations. So according to Spengler, the terms culture and civilization are separate. So the culture is the young stage of the organism when it is full of energy, vitality, and creativity. Later, when more and more technology is developed and things are automated and materialism takes root in the soul of a people, then the culture turns into a civilization. So a civilization is basically an ossified culture. So right now we live in Western civilization. We are already in the winter phase. And according to Spengler, the West, of course, is known for its Faustian spirit, right? And he talks a lot about the Faustian spirit. And again, he's ambivalent about the Faustian spirit because a lot of people on the right today, they have this sort of romantic notion of the Faustian spirit, like the white man has the desire to always transcend boundaries and strive towards the infinite, like the sort of like the cathedrals of the Middle Ages that we can now encounter in Central Europe, but also Great Britain. Um, they're expressions, obviously, of a Christian mindset, but they're also expressions of a Faustian spirit because the spires of these cathedrals, the Gothic cathedrals, they reach into the sky. Yes. And then today we have the space program, like NASA space program. We have the Apollo missions, for example, all named after European pagan gods, so to speak. Yes. And according to Spengler, this is sort of positive because sort of like the West is unique as a culture and then as a civilization that it always wanted to reach more than other cultures. That's why we had like Christopher Columbus I mean, not discovering, but like, entering the new world, and then Vikings before him, and I don't know, Neil Armstrong on the moon, etc. And now we have, I know, Elon Musk wanting to go to Mars, colonize Mars. Yes. But at the same time, the Faustian spirit can also be the West's undoing because because it's sort of like imperial overstretch, like the Roman Empire, when sort of Western man takes one step too many. Because as we know, like in Goethe's Faust, you have to sell your soul, right, to gain this power. So the West sort of sold its soul and is on a declining trajectory. But the decline, of course, can last quite a long time. It's not like one day everything's fine and the next day everything's gone, right? I mean, it can last hundreds of years, this decline phase, because a lot of people on the right, they believe that, okay, everything is really shitty in the West now, in Western Europe and the United States. And things just have to get worse. And then people will wake up and then they will take the helm and steer the Western ship back into the safe harbor and everything will be fine again. But not according to Spengler, because Spengler, as I said, he said it's inevitable because it's like an organism. You cannot stop decline. You cannot prevent it. So once an organism is about to die, it will die. Yes. And I'm pretty much a Spenglerian in the sense because I'm not optimistic. I personally don't believe in a sort of renaissance that somehow the West can reinvent itself and rejuvenate itself and sort of go back to its former glory days. Yes, I mean, I certainly believe that the West is now
Constantine,
in
can we just unpack
in
some of the things
descending, right?
because Spengler, I mean, if he was writing in 1922, well, that's 100 years ago. So it was Western civilization, and you're saying that the conversion from culture into civilization. I'm just trying to unpack your concepts here.
Right.
Is that what starts the decline? Is that when it becomes ossified and frozen? Well, that presumably happened in 1922, and we've had the moon landing and a lot of other things since then. So I mean, if you're talking about when did society start to decline? Did it start to decline in 1922, or did it start to decline 100 years later with the arrival of woke and all the other stuff that we think is terrible about our current stage of Western civilization?
Well, I would argue that the decline already started with the French Revolution. Yes, because when basically the medieval concepts of hierarchy and tradition were completely overturned, and you entered the sort of democratic mass age of nations, artificial nations that didn't exist before. Before you had empires, now you have nation states starting with the French Revolution, and you have the idea that the masses have rights somehow, and the masses have to be appeased, and they have a say in pretty much everything. So, and this was exported all over the West, right? Because it started, I mean, you had the French Revolution that was also partially inspired by the American Revolution. So this whole democratic mass spirit infested the entire West, and well, hasn't let go since. It has just become gradually worse and worse. And of course, like even in a decline phase, because he talks about the decline phase as a spiritual decline, you can still have, of course, technological innovations like the moon landing or traveling in space and all that stuff. I mean, because you still have the Faustian people, but there's no underlying spiritual principle anymore. It's all very mechanistic, basically.
Right. So when was the best? When was mankind, Western man's civilization's best period. And is there any way? I mean, you're saying it's inevitable. We can never get back to that. I mean, should we just accept it, or is there anything? I mean, the West. We're saturated with this concept of agency and freedom and improvability. I guess that's a liberal thought, you know. Where does that come in, or what does Spengler? Is it a how-to book of how to preserve good things, or is it a sort of acceptance book that says you can't do anything about it?
Well, yeah, well, you have to accept it, right? According to Spengler, you have to accept it because it's inevitable. You can't change it. Like Spengler talked about the age of the Caesars in the decline phase, like basically the age of mass democracy, when people become very dissatisfied with the status quo and they will look for a strong man, yes, to basically take control of the state and sort of try to stem the tide of decline. And possibly this strongman will succeed to do so, but in a very shallow way. Like they will not go back to the traditional way that Europe was. They will build a sort of empire, but in a very materialist sense. And it will just prolong the decline, but it will not halt the decline. Yes, and he specifically states that the Caesars, and in my book that I wrote 2 years ago, Esoteric Trumpism, before Trump went insane, I basically view Trump as a sort of like Caesar-like figure.
Yes.
In a Spenglerian sense, and same with Putin and possibly Orban and I mean various other world leaders, Modi maybe, Jinping in China. Also, you have these strong leaders basically, but in the West, these leaders like Trump, they're basically not figures that go against the democratic spirit, but they're products of the mass democratic spirit,
Yeah.
basically, that just perpetuate this sort of primitive materialism, just with a sort of more authoritarian veneer, like the late stage Roman Empire, when the Rome, as the capital of the empire, was already in decay, and only 20% of the capital city were actual Romans, and 80% were at the time already immigrants from other parts of the
Yeah.
empire, like Asia, the Near East, and Africa. Very similar to what we see today, of course, in the cities in the West.
Martin, do you have any thoughts?
Oh, so many. I find your assessment brilliant, Constantine, and frighteningly plausible and familiar. And again, I find myself desperately looking for signs of hope amid the gloom. And I've long been an admirer of the work of the late Professor Samuel Huntington, which I'm sure you're probably much more familiar with than I am. And Huntington, of course, in contrast to the idea that America running along at its side could dominate the world, which was always a fantasy, because even in the Cold War, we had, at the very most superficial and limited level, a bipolar world of communism versus capitalism, and the great issue was supposed to be which one will win and it will end rule forever. I, when but if the world is multipolar, Huntington, of course, visualized India, China, the Muslim world, other emerging potential centers in Africa and Latin America as alternative civilization centers coming up. And of course, we know from Hegel that the historical process is a continual process. It's dynamic. I mean, at the end of the 19th century, the English really believed, or at least wanted to believe, that the British Empire would dominate the world forever, at a time when America and Germany were already rising up, and followed by Russia and Japan, were clearly rising up to challenge them, not just in technological and power terms, but in cultural terms, with different perspectives of the world. Now, when you look at the broader world today, do you see any new culture centers either emerging or potentially that could emerge?
Well, absolutely. Well, I keep saying that, well, the West is in decline, but I think the East is in its ascent. It's
Yes.
clearly the future. The future is in the East. And well, you already mentioned it. Like, I would say, like, until starting in 1945, you had the bipolar world. You had the Cold War with the two camps, the Soviet Union and the United States, and the various satellites. And then in the early 90s, like 1993, with the breakup of the Soviet Union, bipolarity ended, and then you had the unipolar world, where basically the United States was not just a superpower, but a hyperpower, meaning nobody was able to challenge it in the entire world. I mean, this unipolar moment has clearly ended, right? I mean, and it has become very clear since the start of the unprovoked attack by the United States and Israel on
I
Iran.
agree.
Yes, I mean, this has really shown that the United States is really not all powerful because, as we can see, the United States is now in the Middle East in a conflict with Iran. And it can't get out. Yes, because I think Trump wants to get
Exactly.
out. Yes, but he can't, right? Because the Iranians won't let him. So, I mean, it's very clear that the Iranians are winning this conflict.
I
And
agree.
Trump doesn't know what to do because he can't bomb Iran. He clearly doesn't want to bomb Iran because it won't do him any good because he can bomb Iran, but then Iran will bomb back all the Arab allies of the United States and will cause an even bigger economic crisis in the world than we already have. And therefore, I think the argument could be made that Iran is basically becoming, or maybe already is, a new pole in the multipolar world. It is definitely a regional power. And I mean, it surprised me, to be honest. I mean, I was even shocked, right, by Iran's reaction to the attack and how hard and fast and resolved Iran showed itself to be. And I think they're definitely like proving themselves to be an actual pole in this multipolar world. It's a
I
state
agree.
civilization, right? Meaning it is a civilization, meaning it shares a common heritage, common culture, ethnic ties, but is also a powerful state behind it, right? I mean, the same can be said of India. I guess it's another pole state civilization. Um, the Russian Federation, obviously, China, and the United States. I think these are the only state civilizations at the moment, because the Islamic world, of course, is a civilization because they have the common religion, common traditions, but it is not a unified state, right? I mean, this is why you have these constant conflicts always between different Islamic states, because they're not unified as one entity. That's why I think the Islamic world is not a pole yet. I mean, it could become one, of course, in the future. But I think if you look at the world right now, what is actually energetic, vigorous, and sort of youthful in terms of culture and civilization, I would say Russia definitely is. Well,
I
China,
agree.
obviously, and also India. Yes, because I think this is where the future will be. I think Western Europe will become a backwater. I mean, it will still continue, obviously, with its liberal nonsense and so on for for decades, possibly for centuries, right? It will just not be relevant anymore. Yes, I mean, but this is completely natural because all throughout human history, you had these powerful empires that are now completely unimportant. Like, look at Mongolia, right? I mean, Mongolia used to be very powerful, but who ever thinks about Mongolia today? Like, never, nobody. Yes, and I think it will be very similar with Western Europe in the near future. I mean, it's already becoming quite irrelevant. I mean, even on the global stage, geopolitically speaking.
Hmm. Well, I'm just to be sorry to be pedantic, but you're saying that cultures turn into civilizations and then they're ossified. But surely India, I mean, I re agree with you without applying Spengler, but I mean, India and well, Russia's got a very old population. I'm pro-Russian, by the way. India's got a very young population, but it's a very old civilization. Ditto China. So how can they be sort of dynamic at the same time? Because their civilizations are even older than the European one.
Well, I think the main reason why I think
Or they
there's
are they going through
certainly
their
a
cyclical
possible.
phase now? So they're young again.
Well, I think Russia itself. I mean, you have the aging population. This phenomenon is a global phenomenon. Like even India is below replacement level now.
Right.
Yes, I mean in terms of birth rate.
Mm,
This is like a global thing. I mean, it's especially pronounced in the West, yeah, right,
mm,
and in Russia as well.
mm,
But I think Russia has potential because it is not infected with this weird woke mind virus, as
mm,
Elon Musk calls it, the liberal disease, or the democratic nonsense. Yes, it doesn't have these trappings, so it is actually able to develop and it's actually able to have proper continuity, something which you don't have in the West, especially the United States, because in the United States, you have a bipolar political system. And I mean this in a clinical sense, right? Like you have one administration that does one thing, like Biden, for example, opens all the borders, everybody can just march in. Then you have Trump, who wants to close all the borders and kick everybody out. Well, the next one is probably going to be a Democrat because the
mm.
Republicans have finished,
Exactly.
in my opinion, and they will just open the borders again. So, what was the point of even closing them in the first place, right? There's no continuity, and you can't. And like Sergei Lavrov, the Russian foreign minister, said, like the United States is agreement incapable because, like Obama made an agreement with Iran, then Trump comes to power, he just rips it up. I don't like the agreement, whatever. Right? So, I mean, how can you possibly make an agreement with the US? It's not possible. There's no continuity. They cannot plan long-term imperial projects. China can because it's not democratic. It doesn't have to think in terms of like 4-year administrations. Yes, because no president is going to start like an infrastructure project that might last 20 or 30 years because he won't be president anymore. He won't reap the glory, so to speak. That's why in the US you have no high-speed trains, zero, right? In China you have I don't know how many, a lot,
Exactly.
right? I mean, look at the videos coming from China that you can see all over the internet. It's like a science fiction movie,
It
right?
is,
I've
yeah.
never been to China myself, but I've talked to a lot of people that live there, and they say it's true. Like it is very, very, very. It's like they live in the future. We live in the past. Yes. I mean, here
That
in
is correct.
Germany,
That's like
where
even
I'm right
Japan
now,
is
like everything's
old-fashioned compared
falling
to China,
apart.
they say, you know.
Sorry?
Even Japan is less modern than China,
Oh yeah,
apparently.
definitely.
Oh, yes,
Right.
definitely.
Yeah, yeah. Like in Germany, everything's falling apart. Like literally, like the trains in Germany, they're like a laughing stock of Europe now.
Mm,
They're never on time, like 50% late. Sometimes they
mm,
don't show up at all.
mm,
They're dirty and they're slow, you know.
mm,
It's just pathetic. The infrastructure is crumbling all over the place. In the US, it's the same. Like in Russia, I lived in Russia for quite a long time, and
mhm,
I visited regularly because I have a lot of friends and family there.
mhm,
And they're building a lot of infrastructure projects as well. I mean, not as much as China,
mm,
right? But they still have this spirit of development, even
mm,
not just in Moscow, but even in smaller towns, in terms of, I don't know, new highways, new railroads, just like the beautification of various towns. So I think they're doing a lot. And also just in terms of culture,
mm.
right? Because they're going back to the roots, to their own roots, right? Away from the globalized mass culture, especially since, talking about Russia, especially since the conflict in Ukraine started and the West imposed all the sanctions on Russia. I mean, I mean, it's somehow somewhat a blessing in disguise, right? I mean,
Yeah.
because when you walk around Moscow now, compared to, I don't know, like 5, 6 years ago before the conflict, it's completely different, right? Because like in the big shopping centers, you used to have like these multiplex cinemas where they showed like 7 movies. I mean, before the sanctions, it was like six American movies and one Americanized Russian movie. Yes. But now you
Yes,
walk around the shopping centers, you
yes,
have 7 Russian movies and 0 Hollywood movies. And all of them are a lot of them are quite patriotic because they have these new regulations by the Russian government that the new Russian movies or productions have to instill a sort of traditional patriotic sentiment in the audience, which I find very positive, to be honest. I think it's a good thing, right? I mean, that's how it should be done. That's the only way, really. So I think they're on the right track. And I like it because a lot of the Russians, they have really found a way back to their own soul
Mm.
because they are basically they were spurned by the West, right? I mean, they always tried to
That's
yes,
be
right.
friends with the West. The West didn't want them, right?
That's
So
right.
whatever. Now they're turning east because they have no choice. That's why the East is the
exactly.
future, in my opinion. Yes. Also, I mean, sorry,
Constantine,
so many developments.
um, Well, the Western media, I'm giving you a sort of an easy lob that you can knock out of the park, ballpark, but does the Western media misreport then China and Russia and their success?
Well, the Western media doesn't want to admit it, right? I mean, I just remembered like when Trump was in China a couple of weeks ago on the state visit, and you had like I think it was BBC or maybe it was CNN. I don't remember one of the two, but they're all the same anyway. I think CNN, right? And like the CNN reporters standing on the street, I think it was Shanghai or one of the big Chinese cities, like looking at the cameras, the video cameras on the street, and sort of like insinuating that China is some sort of Orwellian police state because they have cameras everywhere, as if you don't have that in London, right? And the US, even
Right,
worse. I mean, London, I mean, Britain itself is a total. It's cartoonish the state of affairs there, especially in terms of like free speech. I mean, you
right.
you had this affair of Henry, right, who was
That's
was
right.
stabbed to death by
That's
the
right.
Sikh, right,
Yes,
and the police handcuffed him and dragged him across like across the crown because they believed the Sikh's accusation that he was somehow
They're
racist,
like some
even
kind of
though he
race
said he'd been
Stasi. It's
stabbed.
really
I mean,
terrible. Yeah.
it's but that's how I mean, if any state is Orwellian, it is well, it's definitely Britain, but it's all the other
yes.
Western states as well, because Germany is no better, to be
Absolutely.
honest.
Well, is it is the Novak case big in Germany now? Because I saw a lot of
No,
people
no,
apparently.
nobody knows about it.
Oh, okay.
The mainstream media, I've never seen it mentioned on the mainstream media. I mean, I think maybe a couple of weeks ago, like some small notice somewhere, but
Mm,
it's not really big, right? I mean, on social media, it's big, like
mm,
X, of course, but not on the mainstream media. I mean, if you walk around now in Germany and ask like random people, I would say like maybe, I don't know, 1 out of 15 people would probably know what it's, maybe less, maybe 1 out of 20, right?
mm.
Would know who he was, right?
Do you have hopes for the AFD, or are they too compromised in your view, or are they going to be destroyed by the mainstream? Where's Germany going
Yeah,
with that?
I mean, yeah, I'm a bit ambivalent about the AFD. Like, I want to have hope in the AFD. I mean, I support the AFD. I vote for them in every election, right? I mean, it's really the best we got, right? They're not perfect, obviously, but nothing is perfect. But it's really the only alternative that has any chance of success is the AFD. And according to the latest polls, I think they're like at like, I think 30 or 31% approval rating now. I think like 5% more than the Christian Democratic Union, the Friedrich Merz, the Chancellor's party, which is, I mean, it's quite significant, right? So basically, every third German somewhat supports the AFD's position, which I believe, right?
Mm,
But I mean, I wrote an article about it recently. I just don't have any hope in the system. Like
mm,
you cannot beat the system from within the system. It doesn't work because the system is already rigged against the AfD. And I don't think they will allow the AfD to come to power. I mean, they're already starting with these shenanigans. They had this, for example, they had this mayoral elections in the city of Ludwigshafen in southern Germany. It's an industrial city. Um, and they had the mayoral candidate from the AfD. He was poised to win the election. I mean, he had a very, very good chance of winning and becoming mayor of this city. And basically, they just banned him from participating in the election a couple of weeks before the actual election. And they based this decision on some statements he made in public on social media and said he was an extremist and didn't respect the German constitution, even though none of his statements were actually illegal, like he wasn't in court or anything. But that's
mm.
what they do, right? So, I mean, when
So,
you listen,
yeah, I mean,
yeah,
they have to get more than 50% to get anywhere because
yeah,
there's a
exactly,
Warnmauer, but
right?
even if they
Yeah,
do, they'll probably come up with something to stop them.
and even then, it will be very difficult for them to do anything because all the institutions will work against them. I mean, like I listen to the German radio when I drive my children to school in the morning, and listen to the news, and it's just like totally grotesque. Because the language they use, like sort of like this 1984 newspeak, right?
Mm,
Like they say things like all the Democratic parties have decided to do this, and if you listen to this, what does that mean? All the Democratic parties. It means all the parties except the AfD, right? This is the language they use on the mainstream media. They
mm,
sort of exclude them from the term
mm,
Democratic parties. It's
mm,
always the Democratic parties, against the AfD. Like it's really obvious the sort of brainwashing that they're engaged in, like the mainstream establishment, but most people still don't get it though, right? Like even though it's so obvious, like I would consider Germany a two-party state. Yes, I mean technically it's a multi-party system, but in reality, I mean you have the AfD and you have all the others because it makes no difference. Like you had like the Olaf Scholz from the Social Democrats, and you had the Greens. Now you have Metz from the Christian Democratic Union, but the policy is always the same. It makes no difference whatsoever. So it's like the establishment unity party and the AfD. And then, of course, you should also consider what some people call the Melonization effect, right? Because you had like Meloni, the Italian leader. She made a lot of noise before she was elected that she was going to do a lot about immigration and so on. Well, now she's been in power for quite a while and she's done absolutely nothing, right? So a lot of people say that the AfD will be the same. That, I mean, they say a lot now, but I think once they come to power, which is sort of likely, they will just be co-opted by the system and they will do nothing, right? It's like Trump. I mean, he's not doing a whole lot either. I mean, in terms of quote unquote mass deportations that he promised, right? There are no mass deportations in the US. And besides,
the
it
Reform
doesn't
Party in
even
the
matter.
UK is going to have to go, is compromising. And of course, the Tories, I mean, I've had a lot of American guests on our show, and they find it unbelievable when I tell them the Boris wave let in 4 million migrants, and that was a Tory thing. So there's no point in blaming the left. Keir Starmer is nothing compared to what the Tories did in their 15 years in power. And they were just following on from Blair, So this Tory Labour or the good right, good Republic, and that's what Americans find. American Beltway sort of bow tie conservatives find it very hard to understand that. I think we've got to start winding up here. So, Constantin, when you talk about Weimar America, is this? It's a very evocative phrase. You can end on just saying a little bit about that, and then we've got to wind up.
Well, the term Weimar America is a very, I guess, a common a meme on X, and it sort of shows the state of affairs in the United States, like a sort of political and cultural instability, which sort of reflects the bipolar system that I sort of alluded to earlier, that you have like these different factions in the US. You have these ultra liberals, and then you have these ultra conservatives, and they can't really find common ground. So you have this cultural conflicts all the time, similar to what I suppose you had in Weimar Germany, where you had sort of like the nationalists like battling the communists like on the streets, right? I mean, you have a very similar situation in the United States, because I think the MAGA movement is not dead. I mean, it's still alive. It just moved away from Trump because Trump moved away from MAGA, right? I mean, if you look at people like Tucker Carlson, for example, I would consider him still a true MAGA person, or Alex Jones, even Nick Fuentes. Yes, I mean, these are real like American patriots or even American nationalists that deeply care about the American people. And the founding stock, which are white Americans.
Trump used it as a tram. He got off at his destination, and then he's gone completely neocon now, hasn't he? I mean,
it's
terrible.
Finished.
Anyway, Constantine, it was great to have you on. We've got to wind up there. Very, very interesting talk. I'm going to be looking at my Spengler tonight, I think. This Abendlandes das Westens, I think, was the very evocative German name, wasn't it, or something?
Der Untergang des Abendlandes.
Abendland, that's the land of the
because basically its literal translation would be the downfall of the evening land, the Occident.
Right. Very, very evocative. Thank you so much. Thank you, Martin. Thank you, Constantin.
A pleasure. Constantin, come back soon, please. Yes, there's so much more to explore with you.
Of course, I'd be happy to come on again. Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.